Red Orchestra 2 Heroes of Stalingrad is a multiplayer first-person shooter developed by Tripwire Interactive and published by Tripwire Interactive. This game is set during World War II and it's easily one of my favorite multiplayer games of all time and one of my favorite World War II games of all time. The game doesn't have a real story, but it is set during World War II and more specifically during the invasion of the Nazis in Russia. And you have two sides to pick. You can pick the Nazi side, the Axis side, or you can also pick the Allies, in this case the Soviets. There is also a standalone DLC game that's called Rising Storm, and I don't own it right now, but you can play a bit of it, and that's set during the Japan invasion by the USA against the Japanese forces. The game doesn't have a real story, and I do like the setting very much, and I do like the environment that they create, but there isn't much to talk about in this section, so I'm not gonna rate it. The game still uses the Unreal Engine and it looks pretty good to this day, but it's nothing jaw-dropping. It is a little bit dated in some of the textures. You have your usual pop-ins when you start a game, some graphical glitches, a bit of clipping when running and watching some 3D cameras from the other players, but still the game looks very good. There are some nice effects. And the game isn't overly violent or overly gory, but when someone explodes, you do see a leg going right and an arm going left, maybe a head, but there aren't bullet wounds or decapitations or anything like that. It's a very simple looking game, but still very effective for where it is set. The game is a first-person shooter set in World War II. So, you have two teams, Soviets and Nazis, and in each team you have different classes to choose, and depending on the class that you choose you have a different objective. If you take the sniper, you have to stay far away from the battlefield but check for enemies moving around. If you're playing as a rifleman, you have to run on the battlefield. You also take controls of tanks to move around the battlefield, or you can play as a commander or a squad leader. Squad leaders are basically spawn points for some squads, and the commander can send artillery attacks and mortar attacks, can force respawns, can make aerial recons, because he is the commander. And his job is really important. If you don't know what you're doing as a commander, you can easily screw everything up for your team, especially if you start bombarding a certain section where there are only allies and you kill all of them, you get minus 100 points, and everyone hates you and they kick you. That's what happened to me the first time I played as a commander, but still I've learned my lesson. Right now I've played countless hours of Red Orchestra 2 and I enjoyed every single moment of it. The game is very hard to understand and very hard to master because it's not your typical first-person shooter. There are two separate modes. One is the so-called action mode, in which you can shoot an enemy multiple times, you have a crosshair, and it's fairly easy, more like a Call of Duty. But then you have Realism mode, and that's easily one of the hardest and still more enjoyable realistic modes I've ever played. Because you don't have a crosshair, you can move the camera around, you're not stuck with the crosshair in the middle, you can move it around a bit. And then you have stamina, you also have an attention reflex thing. Basically when there are bullets flying past your head, you start losing focus, you're a bit more shaky when you're shooting, you can't focus all that well on a certain enemy. And every single weapon has a recoil, they also have bullet drops that make everything harder to hit. And I had a blast playing the game, especially because it makes you feel like you're actually in the war, and not in the good way. It's not heroic, it's not like that, it's actually pretty scary, and it makes sense for some players to camp. It's still pretty annoying when they do camp, but otherwise it's very enjoyable, and getting to hit an enemy is hugely satisfying, especially if he's like 150 meters away. And that's also another thing, you always have a count of how far away the enemy was. Then you also don't have that much ammunitions, you can't just reload. You don't always know how many ammos are in the magazine right now, you can always check and it says, oh, it's over half, it's less than half. And you can reload or don't reload, it's up to you. The game maps are really well balanced, the ones created by Tripwire. There are also some very great community maps, and the modes are your typical ones. You have your team deathmatch, you also have your free-for-all in some of the more custom-made modes. But I do really like Conquest, where you have to go around conquesting every single place. And there is a very fantastic mode that's really underrated and not that many people play it. But there are some servers, 24-hour servers, that play a campaign. And basically there are, I think, around 15 sections on a map. And each time the winning side chooses where to attack, and the other side has to defend. And if the defenders win that round, they can choose where to retaliate. And it becomes this back and forth game very similar to the actual war. And I've rarely won a campaign. I think I only won one of those campaigns, but it was a ton of fun. And I do think that this game doesn't actually require that much team talk, because it's very easy to get killed, but there are multiple respawns. There are about 200 or more respawns for each team, and when you've finished every single respawn, you're screwed. It's nearly impossible to win a game when you've finished every single respawn ticket, because the other team, if they have even only 5 respawns left, they will kill you. It's pretty easy, pretty easy to die in this game, and that's probably the best part of the game. The game is very challenging, as I've already said. Bullet drops require a lot of attention, a lot of focus on where you're shooting. You also don't have that much ammunitions. The AI in some of the campaigns, if you're playing with bots, is relatively good and they can kill you pretty easily. Also, you can bleed out if you're shot like in the chest or somewhere else. And I do think that this game gets very frustrating if you haven't played it for a while. Recently, just to record this footage, I played around 4 hours of it almost straight, and in the end I got very good again, but in the beginning it got real hard and real frustrating and I almost didn't make the review. But I'm here for you guys and I did it, and I got past the frustration of beginning this game again, and it's a very fun game. The frustration is there, but the enjoyment and the complexity, still the game is frustrating if you're new to it, but don't make that count. Just keep playing, keep exercising, try to play some single player modes in which you can play with AI bots, because otherwise you will screw your team up and it can get really hard with some players who are really competitive. But still, if you need any help, add me on Steam and I would be more than glad to help you out. The sound in this game is easily one of the best ones I've ever heard. First of all, the bullets. Being in the battlefield, hearing bullets fly past you is incredibly tense, and sometimes I'm with 2 or 3 other players in the mud waiting for some Nazis to pass by, and then I look on my right, I see my teammate, and then instantly, bullet to the head. He's dead. He's gone. And now you're alone with another one. Look to your left, grenade. He explodes in a lot of chips. And it's just you left. And then, screen goes black, you've been killed. And those are some really intense moments that make Red Orchestra more of an experience than an actual game. And we do find some annoying players on the voice chat, but usually the voice commands are pretty good in the game, and also you can direct some orders if you're playing as a commander or a squad command. And the voice acting of the different sides, both Nazis and Soviets, are pretty good. They are a bit campy sometimes. It's like, Montovarich, we're going to war. Or, house, we're gonna get the Soviets. Things like that. It's pretty absurd if you think about it, but still pretty damn good. Pretty damn good. There are a variety of modes, there are hundreds of Steam achievements, and a ton of community maps that you can also download from the Steam Workshop. A single player campaign and a multiplayer campaign makes this an experience that will last you probably thousands of hours. I've spent a lot of time playing it, and I will spend more time playing it in the near future because it's just a great game and I loved coming back to it and I love talking to you about it. Overall, Red Orchestra 2 is one of my favorite games of all time. It's brilliantly executed, the soundtrack is very good, the sound effects are brilliant, there is a lot of replayability, the game looks really good to this very day, and it's just a fun experience that is also very hard and rewarding. And I do think that if you like first-person shooters, if you like multiplayer games, and if you also love World War II, there is plenty of fun to be had here. So guys, tell me in the comments below, have you played Red Orchestra 2? Do you like it? Do you hate it? I know a couple of people that don't really like it, but in my opinion it's fantastic. So tell me what you think in the comments below. Thanks for watching guys, remember to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.